All right, welcome into the PFF studios with the one and only Mr. Peyton Manning. Thank you very much for coming by,
Thanks
man.
for having me.
You were in town shooting a few different scenes from your ESPN library of content. Tell us a little what you got going on.
Yeah, well, thank you for being a part of it, Chris. I do a show called Peyton's Places, kind of telling the history of the NFL in kind of a fun, informative, entertaining way. So we're doing two things. So we're doing a feature on tall receivers in the NFL, which is pretty commonplace now. But look back, I don't know if you know this, Chris, you were the tallest wide receiver in the AFC your entire career. And when Harold Carmichael retired, you were the tallest receiver in the NFL at 6'5". So kind of talking about the history of that, and then also doing a lot on your former owner, Paul Brown, and talking about quarterbacks don't call their own plays anymore because of Paul Brown inventing the coach to quarterback communication, right? I mean, he took it sort of out of the quarterback's hands, and obviously with Otto Graham, he was messaging, the guards in there, but and then did something in Cleveland on Tuesday on the original taxi squad that Paul Brown, he took over as coach of the Browns. You can only have 33 players on the team. Paul Brown had more players that he wanted to keep, so he made the owner, Mickey McBride, hire them as taxi drivers because he owned the Cleveland Cab Company. That's how the taxi squad got started. So I love the history of the game, and I appreciate you being a part of it today.
You know, it's so amazing to watch you jump into your broadcasting career. Congratulations. Your second Emmy Award this year. It was fantastic.
Thanks.
But this really has been an unbelievable jump start for you to watch you guys work. They're stopping traffic in downtown Cincinnati, this huge production inside the hotel. But you've really taken to this with the same kind of passion that you did playing football, didn't you?
I really have. I wouldn't do it if I didn't enjoy doing it. It doesn't feel like work. I think because my dad played, Chris, I've always been fascinated with the history of the game, and we talked about it today, but I used to see your face every day. My brother Cooper had that Speedsters poster of you and Steve Largent in his room every day. So to be able to go down memory lane, and I mean, some of the things I've gotten to do, I watched Super Bowl III with Joe Namath, and he's talking about plays from that game like it was yesterday. I watched the 1958 championship game, Giants coached with Raymond Berry. And he's talking about, Peyton, there was a little wet spot on the field. I knew if I ran a slant across that wet spot, the corner would slip. I might be able to get open on a slant route. So, it's a passion project for me, and keeps me close to the game, but also telling the history of the game, in sort of the right way.
And there's only one guy who ever tried to talk you out of it, and I think it was me back in there. It was, if you remember, I was in New Zealand, and you were calling around and trying to figure out a little bit of maybe what you might want to do in broadcasting and how it might fit and what decisions I should be making. You had a lot of opportunities. Do you remember that conversation?
I do remember that. And, I think, at that time, you knew, how old my kids were and kind of what my family, life situation was. And I think you were thinking along those lines for me, and knowing the travel that you were having to do and the hard hours you were putting in. You said, Peyton, I have 3 words for you: Studio. And what you were saying was, to do the games, this is what it really takes. I mean, this is what I do. And you told me your weekly schedule. And I think I had an idea of what it was, but I'm not sure I quite knew how much you were doing to prepare, right? And that's the only way how. That's how John Madden, that's how he did it. That's how you did it. And so studio, just saying a little less of a time commitment, fly in to, New York or LA and give your analysis and kind of get home. Whereas, look, I tell you all the time, pro football players, it's really good on your family life. I mean, you leave 8 Saturdays, you're home 8 Sundays, right? The next day. Baseball, basketball, way different. But broadcasters, to do it the right way, there are no home games. And you were telling me that. So if you want to go to your kids' flag football game on Saturday, be careful what you're signing up for.
Yeah, and you're in that time of life right now.
Yes.
I mean, literally, I probably spent more money going to high school and college football games because my 2 boys were playing, and then track meets and soccer games. Because I would fly into a city And I would get on a plane. I would fly back for a high school game. I'd fly back to do the interviews, the other thing. I'd fly to Notre Dame to cover Austin, but I didn't care. And you're getting ready to enter that phase of life. You're twins, both
Right.
eighth graders.
Right. Yeah. And that's, look, my dad was in the stands at all my little league baseball games and basketball games, in the stands every Friday night. Never coached me, in high school or whatnot, but in the stands. And it was important to me that I saw him in the stands. And so he was my mentor that way. So yeah, I mean, because Eli and I, look, out of the pandemic, so many things being done remotely, including some broadcasting. And, I was considering doing it, the traditional way, and, saw some things being done remotely. It was actually my suggestion to ESPN. I said, I could do that. I could do it, from Denver. I could get Eli, he's unemployed, and, I could help him out, and we can maybe do this together, because it's kind of how Eli and I were watching games. I mean, we were watching, you on Sunday night watching the game, and we're texting each other like, did you see them call timeout there? Like, why would they call timeout? And that's kind of how it got started. And so now we kind of basically do that together, where we're sitting on the couch watching the game together, and the fans kind of watching with us. But the fact that I do it from Denver, Eli does it from Jersey. I coached my son's youth football team these past 3 years. Never missed a volleyball game with my daughter on the weekends. And I cherish those moments, like you said. And so I get to kind of, sort of do both.
And the amazing thing was, I won one of your awards this last year, the prediction award where you did the Bengals game.
Mic drop, total mic drop. No, that was awesome. You called it, and some people don't like to ask, to make a prediction because they don't want to look bad. I mean, you owned it. You said, I'm predicting a walk-off touchdown here, a Burrow touchdown, and you did it. And the fact that you left and never came back was the best part about it.
So I literally walked out of my office, walked back in, and I turned on the television. I said, no, I'm not going back. I'm just going to let it go. Yeah.
That would have ruined it. Yeah, only two people that kind of left in the middle of the interview are you and Arnold Schwarzenegger.
We got a lot in common.
Exactly. So. Arnold, I think he thought once he went to commercial that the interview was over, but Eli made him do, the famous line, I'll be back. And he said it, yet he didn't come back. He lied to us, because he thought the interview was over. And but you, the two of y'all both, went out and never came back. But like I said, you did it after a walk-off prediction. That was pretty cool.
It was fun. It's amazing, your family. And of course, I know your mom and dad, and I know Cooper, or Cupper, I guess is how I'm supposed to say it. But it's got to be a little bit exciting for you, because Cupper was a player. He was a really good receiver, and he was a player, got hurt, had some neck issues.
Yeah.
But to watch his son now come back through the cycle, is a quarterback, probably the top pick if things go the way that they're talking about. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, very cool. Cooper was, when I was a sophomore, Chris, in high school, he was a senior wide receiver. Probably the most enjoyable year I ever had playing football. I completed 120 passes that year. I threw 90 of them to my brother. and not because you're here, but like he was kind of a Cris Collinsworth. I mean, he was 6'4". He could run, great routes, fearless across the middle, and goes to Ole Miss on scholarship. And it wasn't a particular play. He was having some numbness in his hand, and they sort of checked him out. They said, Cooper, your neck's just not quite right. Your football career's over. That was tough. I mean, when you grow up around the game, to be told right in the middle of your freshman year in college it's over, it's tough. And the grace and attitude with which he handled that adversity was amazing. He had a great faith, great attitude, had a huge impact on me. He wrote me a letter saying, I want to live my dream of playing football through you. So every day that I played, I never took it for granted that I was healthy playing a game, practicing, because it could be over at any minute. So look, never played football, but been great in business, raised a great family, became a social legend at Ole Miss, if that makes sense to anybody watching. He made his mark. But for him, to have this full circle, and he's got 3 great kids, but his son Archie is a great kid. Like I said, is very athletic, like his dad. I don't know why the speed sort of skipped me and Eli. It went from my dad to Cooper on to Cooper's son Arch. But he's a great kid. He's worked very hard. He's been very patient. I give him a lot of credit. In today's college football world, most kids that are highly recruited, if they don't play in their first or second year, usually transfer. But you were talking earlier today why you went to Florida. because you wanted to go to school there, wanted to play there. You went there as a quarterback. Your dad mentioned, hey, you want to transfer. You're like, no, I want to be here. It's why I went to Tennessee, because I wanted to go to school there. Arch went to Texas because he wanted to go to Texas and play for Coach Sarkisian. And so I'm real proud of him for staying and looking forward to watching him play this year.
Can you just watch him? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Can you, the quarterback and the analyst, can you just watch him and enjoy it, or is that just impossible?
You know, I kind of learned a little bit with Eli when Eli got to Ole Miss, that I was watching the film of his games, and next thing you know, I got 4 pages of notes as I'm writing things down. And this is kind of, I leave a lot of voicemails and voice memos now. But I was, having conversations with Eli, and I wanted to help him. I wanted to just give him every knowledge that I had learned and pass it on. But I finally figured out, I said, let me be better off. Let me wait till Eli calls me and says, hey, what do you see, right? And so I really tried to take that same approach with Arch. He's my nephew, and he does call and reach out. And I think sometimes he probably regrets it. Last spring, they had a 2-minute drill that I think ended in a 4 and out situation, and he kind of called me about thoughts on the 2-minute drill. And I left him 3 9-minute voice memos, because the first one I forgot, to talk about kind of how you got to avoid a sack and you got to get an explosive play. And so I called it with a second voice memo. So, 27 minutes later, I think he's like, you know what? I love my Uncle Peyton. I'm not sure, I want that much information, but yeah, I'm his uncle. His dad, Cooper, has done a great job raising him. They're very close, and I just want to be there to help and support him. He came out to Denver 2 years ago. We watched some film together. We threw together, and but that was his idea, kind of wanting to come to me, and that's kind of how our relationship goes.
It's so amazing for me to see you as a peer in broadcasting now. Of course, I did a lot of your games.
Yeah.
We had a lot of interviews. We had a lot of conversations as part of it. And you probably changed my view of the game as much as any player because of the way you operated. I mean, basically, and I don't know all the details of this, but you would come in early in the week, you would do all your studying, a puff of smoke would go up, and you would talk to coaches, and a game plan emerged. But when we would come in there on Fridays, you were running the show. There was like a pre-practice where you went over every play. You would have the call sheet, you'd tuck it in your shorts, right there, and you would go over it, and you have pre-practice, and then you ran practice, and you probably ran the meeting afterwards. But we were talking about it today, like, who better than the guy who's at the line of scrimmage to adjust? No matter how good a play caller is, he couldn't know what the defense was or what they're adjusting out there on the field, maybe 20% of the time. You're getting the last look, and that, I think, as much as anything, will be your legacy, what you were able to do at the line of scrimmage. Do you ever reflect on that opportunity?
Well, I was honored and to have had the opportunity to have some say and to be able to change plays. And there's this great argument, Chris, what's the best way to call plays? Is to be in the press box where it's calm, there's not a lot of noise, you have this great view on the field. Coordinators like to be on the sideline, right? They can feel the energy, and debatable which one's better. I would argue there's no greater view of the defense and what's going on than right there behind the center. It is the best view because you see it in real time and you have time to adjust. And had a great coordinator, Tom Moore. You remember, I know you and Al Michaels loved, walking out of the field and having to go through a different cloud of smoke. Tom Moore's cigarette smoke.
And he has a unique way of talking.
Yes, he does.
He has a unique way of talking.
Yes, he does, because of a long time smoking habit. But Tom, he saw how I was preparing. He saw how we were practicing, and we were getting down in a lot of games, Chris, and we started going no huddle, and we called it lightning. And I'd call a lot of my things or I'd audible out of plays, and finally he said, "Why are we waiting to get down 14-0 before we start doing this no huddle? Why don't we just start the game that way?" And that's kind of how it was born. But I really worked hard to try to earn his trust and his respect. I never called a play or called an audible that I think surprised Tom Moore. I mean, it was things that we had talked about during the week. I wasn't calling a throwback reverse to the quarterback or a flea flicker. I wasn't going to go out of the way, but I liked having that responsibility. And it goes both ways. I mean, you call plays that don't work and you kind of you feel bad and you say, maybe I should have stuck with it. Tony Dungy always said, no, this is how we've been preparing. We didn't execute it. Don't second guess yourself. And so to have that trust and faith from your coaches, that meant a lot to me.
But you always believed in yourself. Even, tough rookie year, you were slinging interceptions, but they weren't going to take you out of the game. But the one that I always remember, and I've never heard you tell the story firsthand, is when I think it was the Colts, they were sort of debating back and forth if they were going to take you or not.
Right.
And basically you said to them, you'll regret it the rest of your life. Give me that story.
Well, yeah, look, I was up for the Heisman Trophy, and, Charles Woodson won it, incredible player. But I guess it wasn't the best experience in New York, being up there with having a camera on your face and, sort of this live reality TV show of, kind of filming your disappointment. And the reason I was disappointed, I really wanted to win it for the University of Tennessee. It never had one. Tennessee's never had, they've had 4 runner-up finishes, never won one. So that was kind of my disappointment. Anyway, so now we're going to go to the draft in April. And, I really wanted to go to the Colts. It wasn't far from Knoxville. I knew a lot about Bill Polian. There was a receiver named Marvin Harrison that I'd studied up on. I'm like, I think this place has got a chance to kind of get it going. And the Colts just said, hey, we don't know. We're not going to tell you up until, the day of the draft. And so I went and visited them for like a little health combine recheck, they called it, about 3 weeks before the draft. And I just kind of said, hey, listen, I want to come here. I really think there's a good thing going here. But I'm just not into playing a lot of games. And I'm not going up to New York again and having this sort of aha gotcha moment and y'all take somebody else. So if you're not going to take me, I just like to know that in advance. But I said, if you do take me, I promise you we'll win. If you don't take me, I will kick your ass for the next 15 years. So, and I don't know. It wasn't like trying to make it something. It's just kind of how I felt at the time. And supposedly that's when Bill Polian said, I think we're going to take him. That's what kind of convinced him that, hey, this is our guy. So I didn't plan that. It wasn't scripted or whatnot, but I guess they liked that sort of bold, statement, and maybe that's why they drafted me.
One of the games that I had the pleasure of calling of yours was the famous 4th and 2 with Bill Belichick going for it. And it was so contrary. Today, nobody would think anything of it, right?
Absolutely the right call, right? Yeah.
So, but at the time, it was the defensive-minded Bill Belichick. It was 4th and 2. They had a lead, and everybody in the building knew he was just going to punt the ball away. And he didn't. He didn't. He went for it on 4th and 2. They missed it barely. So instead of you getting the ball back in the fourth quarter with a chance from your own 30, you've got it on their 25 or 30 or whatever it was. Do you remember the moment and what you were thinking? Because I know what Bill was thinking now, but what were you thinking when you saw them going for it?
I completely remember. I was standing next to my center, Jeff Saturday, and I was yelling that I said, we're going to lose the game. They're going to go for it, and we're going to lose the game. I was mad because they were doing the right thing. We started out slow in that game, and all of a sudden we caught fire, and they could not stop us. And so that's what he was saying. He was saying, we're not giving the ball back. And I was like, no, just punt it. Just punt it, and, just give us a chance. And we stop them in this incredible play, and now – I'm super excited, but I remember, I will admit, I watched the replay of the broadcast that night, Chris. It's always fun to watch the games that you win, right? And you want to hear what you and Al had to say. But now you got a real challenge because, like you said, we're on the 25-yard line with like more time than we need to score from there. And my whole thing is, how do we score a touchdown and not give Tom Brady time to go down and operate? Because every time I'd watch Tom Brady play and I'd watch a team and I'd see them run out of bounds with 1:30 to go on their 2-minute drive to take the lead versus the Patriots, and I go, that's going to cost them the game right there. If he stays in bounds, now they can run more clock and kick this field goal and beat the Patriots. And that's how I used to watch football, especially watching the Patriots. And so I said, I am not giving Tom Brady any time for this. And I can remember it because you made the call and you were pointing it out just like you do. But at one point you kind of went, okay, they kind of need to hurry up here a little bit, because it literally was like 14 seconds when I'm like, you know what? I've seen Brady do something. I'm not giving him any chance. And so We threw a touchdown to Reggie Wayne with just a few seconds left, and we went, I'll admit, we probably took it a little too far, but I wasn't going to give Brady a chance. But, yeah, I mean, that was classic Patriots-Colts history, a little bit of cat and mouse with me and Belichick, and ended up working out our way.
It's so bizarre for me now when I see you on television and I see Tom Brady on television, and I spent a lot of time talking broadcasting with both of you, maybe a little more with Tom than I have with you. But you also have Belichick on your show now a lot. And for a lot of people, it's just magical to watch the two minds that used to go at it on the field. And he was a defensive-minded head coach, right? And what you've been able to discuss on the air. But does that feel a little surreal to you too?
Absolutely, because I got to know Coach Belichick, played for him in some Pro Bowls, and it's like we were both trying to get information out of each other without giving them anything. But, and so, I had a relationship with him, but the fact that I got to work with him, with Eli this past year, and hearing kind of his insight on, hey, this is what we were thinking in these type of situations. And God, I wish I would have known that back in 2003 before I threw 4 interceptions in the AFC Championship. That would have been helpful. But it was awesome to work with, and he and Eli have their history of the Super Bowls.
Sure.
He's so respectful to both of us. And so it was awesome to kind of go behind the ropes. Because, I mean, I think you've told me about some of y'all's production meetings. I mean, he was guarded. He wasn't going to give out a lot. And so this past year, to see him open up and to kind of give out some information, he's still not giving away all the secrets. It was a lot of fun.
It was so interesting for me when we started working with PFF. We would go to the Combine every year in Indy, and we would go up there and we would meet with all the teams. And so a lot of teams would send in their backup defensive tackle coach or somebody, whatever. But I immediately flashed back to that call on going for it on 4th and 2, because Belichick had guys from Harvard and MIT and Stanford in the room, true mathematicians. And I was like, oh my gosh, he plays this thing off like it's just a gut feel all the time. He's ahead of the curve. He's doing the math.
Yes.
And we're seeing now the game of football, and I'm going to give my guys at PFF a little credit. They've sort of been at the forefront of that. But how have you seen the game change in that way for the better?
Well, what PFF done is totally changed the game, because look, when I was playing quarterback, I wanted as much information as I could get. I mean, just give me everything. And the Colts, they were giving me everything, but there just wasn't that much to give. There wasn't that much information on each player. I mean, it was a little more, this is where the player went to college, this was his 40 time at the Combine. I'm like, how's that going to help me beat the Jets this week? But now, what PFF is doing, I mean, I've talked to quarterback, I talked to Mahomes, I talked to Josh Allen, and the information that they're getting because of y'all going into a game, the level of preparation for them is off the charts. And that, but like you said, what coaches now, the information they can gather. I mean, like you said, Belichick made that decision on 4th and 2. He was using information, but I think he was going off a little bit of instinct, as that, hey, we can't stop these guys. I remember his defense was so mad at him the next day, right? That was the big story, but it was the right call. And now people are doing it because of the information y'all provide, and it's making the game better.
And nobody second guesses it anymore.
Not even us.
It's interesting because when you're talking about, you go into the press conference, and it used to be when Bill went in there after going for it on 4th and 2, it was because it didn't work, right? It was, what are you doing, Coach? You lost the game. Right. You lost the game.
Right.
Now, these coaches come in and go, look, it was a 49% decision.
Yeah.
We took the 51%, but that also means we're going to be wrong 49%.
That's right.
So if you guys want me to play the math, I got to play the math. And it's going to work out the other way sometimes.
And I like what PFF provides in the TV, the broadcasting provides those same numbers. So it kind of, tells the fans at home, hey, this is why he's doing it, right? And I kind of like that because, look, I've coached some youth football. Coaching's hard.
It's hard.
You got to make tough decisions, and they're not doing it anymore on a whim. I mean, there's still guts and instincts and feel for the game. Don't get me wrong. But the fact that y'all are providing, this is what the data is showing, and this is why he's doing it, it kind of makes fans go, okay. And so now they're, they want you to go for it every single time because it's fun for the players, for the fans to kind of watch that aggressive style of coaching.
Do you see football differently? Is football evolving? In other words, we go through the whole generation with you and with Tom and the true drop back passers.
Yeah.
And I still think there's a pretty strong case to be made that the most space that you as the quarterback can impact is from the pocket. You've got 25 yards each direction. You've got 60 yards each direction down there. That's a lot of square footage to cover, right? And so if you're in the pocket. But we're also seeing Lamar and Jaden Daniels and all the guys now that are making a difference with their legs, and Josh and moving around. Like, where is the game of football today?
Yeah. Look, for a long time, when I was playing, Chris, I remember there was lots of talk about that the drop back quarterback is about to become extinct. There's just not a place for him anymore. And I kept saying, God, I hope that's not true. I'll be out of a job. Eli's definitely out of a job. Brady's not going to work very much longer. And the truth is that, they were wrong. There was a place for different types of quarterbacks. And the smart coaches were adapting their offenses based on what that quarterback's skills were. And that's not how it always used to be, right? It used to be, now you got Andy Reid, who started watching Texas Tech film to see what plays Mahomes like to run to give him a chance to be successful. For a while, NFL, there's no way we're watching a college film. That is beneath us, right? No, we're not running. We're going to run NFL plays, and that's what I like seeing. So I think there still is a place for the drop back quarterback. I'm going to toot your own horn here. An NFL coach, you could tell it was all PFF study based, but he texted me. He said, Peyton, you have the greatest, you have the least sacks per attempts of all time. Yep. You're number one in sacks. And he said, I'm doing a presentation on the art of the throwaway and the art of not taking a sack. He says, do you remember a specific throwaway in your career that was just monumental? And I'm telling you, it was one of the great questions because I could not think of, because I didn't think of a throwaway as that just won the game, right? But so I think there is a place for the quarterback that knows when to get rid of the ball, to throw it on time. Look, I couldn't move like Lamar could, but you can still make quick decisions. And I think Lamar has adapted his game where he still is a pocket quarterback first.
He is.
Now, nobody's open. I can be Lamar. So I think there's a place for both. I think that's the best part about the NFL, that we can adapt to different players and their strengths.
Yeah, it is amazing, that statistic alone, that under pressure, you took the fewest sacks and you had the best quarterback rating as we do it here. It's amazing to see what that does. And in your mind, if you give up a 7-yard sack, your chances of converting that drive is almost over at this point.
That was
right?
it. That was the reason. That was the reason I did it. Tom Moore at the time when I first started saying that it's a 7% chance of a touchdown drive after a sack, and that just stuck in my head. And it bothers me when I see quarterbacks take an unnecessary sack to avoid the incompletion, right? Avoid affecting their completion percentage, right? Because that sack falls on, not on them, it falls on the offensive line. And I learned real quick from an old coach named Howard Mudd who said, you better throw that ball away, right? Don't give that to us if it's unnecessary. But that was the reason. We were using kind of PFF information before we really knew what that meant. But 7%, I'm like, there's no chance we're going to score a touchdown if we get a sack. But a throwaway, I can deal with 2nd and 10. I can't really deal with 2nd and 18 that well. It's not a lot of good 2nd and 18 calls on that call sheet.
Jalen Hurts, now, you're an SEC fan. You grew up in it as I did. To watch what happened to him in the championship game where Tua comes in, replaces him, throws a game-winning touchdown pass. In my mind, I remember thinking, that kid is finished. Mm-hmm. He's finished, right? There's no way. Mm-hmm. He's not going to get his job back at Alabama.
Right.
Ends up transferring to Oklahoma.
Right.
Everybody looked at him as a runner first. When you watch him play now, and the 2 Super Bowls that he played, because maybe his two best games that he's ever played.
Without
One
a doubt.
bad play out of those two games.
100%.
But how did that happen?
I mean, it tells you all about his mental toughness, right? Because that's the kind of situation where it's embarrassing and you just don't sort of recover from it mentally or emotionally. So it tells you how mentally tough that, he is. And they said, you know, he was the first guy to high five Tua in the locker room, and, you know, was as celebratory after that win as, you know, all the players that were, you know, involved in the game. And you're right. I mean, he's played so well in both those Super Bowls, but I like the way he goes about it. He calls me a lot. I'm just, and asks me lots of questions. They actually run a lot of plays that we used to run, Sirianni to Frank Wright to Tom Moore, sort of that chain. And he calls me with very specific questions about certain plays. So he's a student of the game. You know, as another example, you think, I mean, he squats 600 pounds. He can, you know, run over guys. He can throw it a mile. But his appreciation of the cerebral part of the game is what's impressive to me, and how he's taken his game to the next level. And I think the sky's the limit for this guy.
Have you ever met a more intense, serious human being than Jalen?
No.
It's almost intimidating when you're in the room with
I haven't
him.
had a face-to-face with him in a while. We do a lot of texting and a lot of voice memos, but I imagine he's reading those with a very straight, serious face. Like, I don't crack any jokes with him. You know, I don't test my material on him, because I'd imagine I would hear crickets.
You've been such a big part of all of this for so long. The comedy, though, that you have done in commercials, Saturday Night Live, I see you host Country Music Awards. You do a great job with all of it. But somehow you've become almost a stand-up comedian. The first one I remember, really, in my mind, that I knew that was who you were, was when you're trying to hit the kids with a football, right? Saturday Night Live. Even the kid runs in the toilet, in the portalette, and you're drilling him.
Yes.
Like, how did that part of your life evolve? Like, how did that
I
happen?
think it goes back to my brother Cooper, who was very funny, always quick-witted, a little bit of the class cut up, but yet the teacher still gave him an A because he was charming, whatnot. Whereas I was always super wired, serious. You know, I see a lot of family pictures, and I have this sort of, it's not a smile, it's just kind of a blank look. And I don't know, that's kind of how I was growing up. And so Cooper finally, I kind of get, I guess probably into college, and Cooper finally says, Peyton, you've got to loosen up a little bit. I mean, you got to smile more, you got to laugh more. Otherwise, you're going to drive yourself crazy. And I think it had a lot to do, Chris, with that football was such a grind, at least for me. I couldn't outrun anybody. I couldn't throw it 75 yards. I had to outwork them. And so I was always watching extra film and, you know, watching more film, Chris, of myself than I was necessarily of the opponent, right? My footwork, my mechanics, our practices. And so, I mean, you got to have some kind of release and escape from that. And I think just learning to laugh in a locker room, sitting around, as you remember those days where just, you know, the DBs are getting on to the offensive line and just laughing, and then learning to laugh at yourself. And so I think that's what, you know, doing these commercials, because I played in the NFL, allows you to take your helmet off and show that you can laugh at yourself. You don't take yourself that seriously. I can work hard, but I can also laugh. And you got two brothers, Cooper and Eli. You better learn to take it, to have thick skin, to maybe dish it out a little bit. So I think that's where that came from. And it's been a good balance from, you know, from all the hard work and serious things, you know, that I did in my quarterback preparation.
Your mom and dad, adorable people,
Thanks.
by the way. They're amazing. We've had a chance to spend some time with them as well. As you look now where you are in life, and played football, your dad played football, your dad was the parent that was coaching, now you've got kids that are playing as well. What do you see out of yourself that came directly from them, and how does it impact your day-to-day?
Yeah, no, I mean, great parents, great mentors, and great role models. And so I find myself kind of following that same lead. And look, I'm busy, I'm stimulated, you know. And I remember my dad, when he retired, I was 8 years old, that he wanted us as kids to see him working, right? See him going to work every day, you know, he's doing different things, and that's what I wanted to do. But yet, like I said, he was in the stands for every Little League baseball game and my youth basketball games. And so I don't miss any of those for my kids. And so always told us after the games, he was proud of us, told us that he loved us. You know, my dad lost his father when he was in college. That had a huge impact on his kind of parenting philosophy, that he was going to be present with his kids, always telling us, you know, that he was proud of us. And so I've tried to follow that same lead. It's a good documentary on my dad. You were talking about Boomer Esiason and his son documentary. Good one on my dad several years ago, kind of telling his story about losing his father and how he raised his kids from learning from that. I personally, the documentary showed a few too many crying videos of me as a 3-year-old, Chris. At what point do you think, as a father, you stop filming your 3-year-old son getting kicked in the head by his older brother and maybe go out there and help the poor kid? No, I got to keep filming. This might be a documentary one day. So, you know, besides that, he's been a great dad. But yeah, look, my dad, my favorite quarterback, my hero, my role model, my dad, all wrapped into one. So he was a great teacher and a great mentor, and I kind of find myself doing a lot of the things that I learned from him as a kid.
It's amazing, though, for me. I've been around Cincinnati now for most of my life. You come in, I agree to go down and do your show with you. We had a lot of fun together today. And the first 2 people that I saw walking in the hotel both said, "Peyton, it is such an honor to meet you." Peyton, to me.
I love that.
Yeah, and I'm like, I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, my forehead's not that big, my neck's not that long. I don't know if that's a compliment or not.
Yeah, Wayne Gretzky's the only other one that I ever got anything close to that.
Great one.
But it's been great having you here in town. Really appreciate you coming by here, and just so proud of what you're doing.
Chris, thanks a lot, man. Really enjoyed it.
All right, buddy.
Thanks, pal.
That was great.